All right, Meredith, thank you so much for joining us here on Spark TV.
Thanks so much for having me, Danielle.
I am so excited to chat with you. When we got connected and I looked at Because Creative Experiences online, I was like, holy crap, you have done some incredible work. So I'm just so interested to hear your backstory. Maybe let's start there. Can you, and I'm super keen to know, did you always have a business? Was there a career? Like, tell us everything.
Yeah, sure. I'm a Kiwi living in Aussie. I started my career in broadcasting and radio, and I really enjoyed that for a lot of reasons, but like lots of other Kiwis, wanted to just leave New Zealand. That was my sort of thing. So I moved to Australia. I met my now husband, who's English. I did quite a bit of traveling around Australia, and then moved to the UK. Did a few different roles there, a lot of them sort of temping. Because of my background of sort of promotions and marketing and broadcasting, I fell into a position. When I say fell into, I interviewed for. Yeah, I fell into experiential marketing at Because. I worked for the London agency for 5 years. I spent 10 years in London, and I did 5 years of those at Because, doing all sorts of amazing campaigns for global brands, and really had a taste for it because it sort of combined my love of event-based marketing, events and marketing. And I'd always wanted to get close to the Southern Hemisphere. I think, I work for, my business partner is the original founder and CEO of Because. And wow. I think one night I just sort of floated, I'd love to start the agency, in the Southern Hemisphere. New Zealand felt too small for me to come back to after 10 years in London. That was probably wrong, but I think that, there's a bit of reverse culture shock when you come from sort of being there. I couldn't see myself there. So instead I moved to Sydney in 2011 and did a joint venture startup with the business. So I'm the co-founder here, and I guess naivety is a wonderful thing because, starting an agency in a market that you've never worked in before, is
crazy.
I guess ambitious, but you don't know what you don't know. So, had I always, did I always have this amazing entrepreneurial sort of streak kind of thing? I think I've always been entrepreneurial, but I think it was more opportunity. I created an opportunity for myself, and then suddenly sort of one thing leads to another kind of thing, So, and here we are, we're, in our 11th year of business here. We've got offices across Sydney, Melbourne and Auckland, and we very much leverage off our the UK and global business, but we run our own P&L. So, we paddle our own canoe. So as much as we leverage sort of skill sets and, some of our marketing, it is very much its own entity, which is, hugely rewarding because, I think it just means that we can make our own decisions and set our own course of direction, but still be very outward looking, which I think is really important for businesses.
I think that's incredible because I feel like people get stuck on one way of doing business. And, I think a lot of people think, well, I need to have the one perfect business idea and that will be the thing I do. So I love that your story is actually, no, I took this opportunity, I made the next step, I fell into this, I did this, and then I saw something and then, created that joint venture. So I absolutely love that story. Now, I've not interviewed anyone on Spark TV who has taken that approach of there being that entity that already exists and then essentially doing the joint venture. What did that process look like?
Well, it was a 3-year deal that myself and Sharon set up, and I took a loan from the business, and in return worked for a reduced salary in year 1 kind of thing, and then in year 2 the business needed to stand on its own 2 feet, be cash neutral, and in year 3 profitable, pay back the loans, and then I moved into a majority shareholding position kind of thing. Wow. So it was the right deal for me and for them, because I think what I see when some people who have done similar things to me, sometimes the deals are not really favorable to to the person who's actually starting the business in another market, like starting a business in another market where the brand isn't actually known, there's no handouts from global. There is, they like, although there is, lots of things that you can draw from them, it's a completely different market kind of thing. Yeah. So, LinkedIn was an amazing thing, for me. That was really starting to kick off in 2011. And I was fortunate that I had some clients that I'd worked with who had immigrated over here. London is always tapped for its marketing talent in Australia. So, there was some good connecting of the dots, but that's certainly what helped me. So the deal was structured in that way. It made it motivating for me, because I think that, I see a lot of people have, do a lot of work for a relatively small shareholding, and that either needs to come from capital or it needs to come from sweat equity. There needs to be some sort of value exchange there, and I think for me it really worked. And longer term for my business partner, I say my boss because I guess I still sometimes see her as my boss. I was an accountant, but really I'm a peer now. It was motivating.
Yeah. Oh, I could not agree with you more, because I see that in, we have these typical startups who raise capital and these term sheets that really don't favor the founder. And I'm like, that person is just like working 24/7 to make this a reality. You've got to structure a deal to incentivize them and make them motivated.
Yeah, 100%. And look, longer term, it's better for people to have, it's better for whoever the original investor is to have a smaller piece of a bigger pie and keep that person, because I think that otherwise anybody who does that job, and if they end up having a bit of a crap deal, I think, they could just turn around and it depends on what your contract terms are. They're probably going to turn around and say, actually, I don't want you, I'm over this. I'll start again kind of thing. So there's, the longevity piece and getting the deal structure to be motivational for both parties. It's in the investors' interests as well, because then they're going to be able to, the lifetime value of, a smaller share of profits coming in over, a decade is better than, having that lion's share and then having somebody say, actually, it's my guts, your glory.
No, I totally agree. I mean, in saying that though, so as I think about, you talk about the 3-year deal. So going from loan to then being cash neutral to then being profitable, that's still pretty much, that's a lot of pressure in 3 years though as well. How did you go with that?
Oh, look, I think, again, you don't know what you don't know, but I think that is like the right path. I think that, if you, I think that's what it has to be. Otherwise, there's sort of, there's no light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing. And I think, females sometimes can play things quite small kind of thing as well, and I'm a big fan of how Emma Isaacs sort of talks about that, females sort of often have these sort of small kitchen businesses kind of thing, when in reality, those businesses are far harder than a bigger business to run kind of thing, because they're sort of playing small. So, it definitely wasn't easy, particularly since I borrowed money at quite a good rate and then had to pay it back. So it was actually like, I had some forex issues that went against me. But I think just having those milestones set in place, it can become quite real, and before you know it, you're doing that kind of thing. And I think that, when I look at other people's businesses in different sectors, it's all very similar trajectories, really, kind of thing. Like there's all the smoke and mirrors of, everybody else's business is so much more successful than mine. But, often those ones which are outwardly successful, they're losing lots of money kind of thing. The founder isn't paying themselves. It's not really a proper business kind of thing. So, I think, yes, I just think that a 3-year structure like that is realistic and really the business is viable then. Otherwise, I would say if you're not hitting those milestones, and this is totally my opinion of it, I think it's probably time to rethink what the business is.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I could not agree more. My philosophy is, if you're not paying yourself, if you're not profitable, what are you doing? Like who wants to work for free? Like that is not why we go into business.
No, it's not motivating. And I think that, it's you won't be able to continue that without having some resentment. And I think also everybody's got bills to pay, you've got families, and, I think that's why I often say to friends who are like, I'm thinking of starting my own business. I'm like, why? You have an amazing job, really good salary. You could do something entrepreneurial within your own organization to itch that, sort of scratch kind of thing. As I say, there doesn't have to be this, entrepreneur thing where, it's just this unique idea and, nobody's ever thought, there's more than one path to becoming a business owner.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I think part of the problem is we get, a bit of shiny object syndrome. We see the headlines, we see the unicorns, and we kind of think, oh my God, my life would be amazing if I was just a startup unicorn. And they call them unicorns for that reason. They don't exist. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. I know that. As I say, it's always so easy to compare yourself and compare other people's success. And of course, people, that's the dream kind of thing. But, there's nothing bad about having a successful, smaller, profitable business kind of thing.
Yeah.
You pay yourself a salary, you get some dividends, it's, there's a lot of businesses out there, they're so obsessed with this like cult of entrepreneurship, and they're not actually profitable businesses. And for me, sometimes I look at that, I'm just like, wow, it's, I'm like, why, what's that's, you're not a charity.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it is a little bit of headline grabbing, it feels like people, and look, I'm guilty of this. When we started Scrunch, my influencer marketing business a decade ago, it's like that was what the culture was. You have to go out and raise capital. You have to spend it all. You have to build these huge technology platforms. And we did all of that. And it wasn't until we kind of went, oh my God, this is like a hamster wheel that we do not want to be on, that we kind of like went, we're getting out of this startup scene and just going to run a profitable, bloody business. Yeah. And it's so much more rewarding and fulfilling and less stressful as well.
Yeah, totally. I think, it's a real scene kind of thing. And I think that, that would be something that I would say to people starting a business is just be careful how, be careful which communities you're really mixing in. If you are the sum of the 5 people you spend time with, make sure they're actually people that A, inspire you, but B, have got profitable businesses themselves, because some people on these, on the speaker circuit and things like that, if you scratch beneath the surface, there's a lot of sizzle and not a lot of sausage.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so true. So tell me then, you obviously had this massive challenge of coming into a new market and growing. How did you do it? What sort of strategies did you employ to actually get into and cut through the Australian market?
I think leveraging the network, first of all, this sounds really stupid, but real active listening, like listening to what clients were saying were their problems and really understanding that, and then coming back with tailored solutions to them. This is relevant, to a marketing, consultancy sort of business. So,
well, I think listening to your customers is pretty relevant to every business.
Yeah. But I think, sometimes it's like, you think, what is going to be where you're going to fit in the market. But then when you start talking to people, you're like, actually, I can see a little bit of clear space in here. This is how we're going to sort of wiggle in kind of thing, because, a lot of the clients that we work with are top one, we only really work with I would say probably top 50 advertisers, and they're, got a lot of compliance and procurement and things like that. So, it's quite difficult to work with them as a smaller business. So you really have to spot the opportunity, and you'll only do that by talking to a lot of people, getting in front of them, doing a lot of lead generation yourself as well. So, I guess everybody does business development in different ways kind of thing, and I don't mind talking to people kind of thing. I worked with various business development people who would, we would obviously form our list, we would look at what we thought, would have a clear proposition. We continue to do this to this day. We do masterclasses, which is a sort of product for prospects. So, you're serving before you sell something. And I think that's what I've always sort of taken, the mantra. And it's actually my business partner, Gareth, who came into the business, probably 2 years into the business, 2 to 3 years into the business's life, that was his sort of always his mantra, is that you got to serve before you sell. And I think that sort of approach. And look, honestly, I think persistence, there was obviously times where I cried, cried, and it was not, good. And it felt like, and, a lot of people are quite kind when you're first starting and generous with their time. And they sort of, give you false promises and false hope, and it's just so disappointing when they promise you a brief and and they don't know that you're literally waiting for the phone to ring from them, kind of thing, and they might pick up the phone 6 months later, picking up the conversation like it was just yesterday, and things move. So I think that was definitely hard. So I think that persistence and not I think you need to know when to give up, but I knew that we could. I knew that we were a successful business. I knew that we had something to offer, and I guess hanging in there, really. Hanging in there and adapting and keeping listening and keeping adapting, just keep iterating. And, when I started the business, I'd left the business as a senior account director. I wasn't a business director. I didn't have really an understanding of the business. I knew how to run clients and I knew how to run teams. So, there was a whole nother skill set that I was having to learn, but I didn't really need to learn that until I had business in, So, I think it's just, again, it's just sort of one step after another, and seek guidance from people around you who've done it before, and, identify those helpers, because people are generous with their time, and just make sure that you're generous with your time and reciprocal too,
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's really interesting. So many things to unpack there. But I love that you did say, worry about the business when you've got business. I see a lot of people when they're just getting started kind of going, well, I need a fancy website. I need to have my, business details. I need a PO box. I need this. I'm like, hang on a second, where are your customers?
Yeah, totally. And all that sort of stuff, people get so thing of setting up a business. I'm like, it's really not that hard to get an ABN. It's really not that hard to
2 minutes.
Yeah, it's really not that hard to register, trademarks, things like that. It's like there are certain things that you get your insurances in place. But yeah, focusing on getting out there and talking to people are going to build, make sure that people trust you, that you're credible and things like that. And, and
you're adding value. Like you said, you're serving first.
Yeah, and I think that's more important than your website at that stage, kind of thing. As I say, I think people get caught I think some entrepreneurs are more creators, kind of thing, that they love the creation of the product. So they've got to make sure that either they surround themselves with somebody who's going to help them sell it, or, what gaps do they need to plug, kind of thing. But in reality, I think if you're starting a business, you need to be all things to all people, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, that is so true. And I do love that you've kind of touched on sales a couple of times, because I know that you're spot on. A lot of founders, and females especially, don't always love sales or BD. They don't love being that person that's out there kind of peddling their wares. But it's just so important. If you don't have customers, you don't have a business.
No, and also, if you've got something that you genuinely believe in, there's the whole thing, it's totally not dirty, but I do think that, the persistence and, is really important. That there's those stats on how many times you actually have to have an interaction with a person, and this depends on whether you're selling a service or a product, but, it's, in service-based businesses, our pipeline from when we meet someone to when we land a PO, let alone get the cash, that could be well over 2 years that we're nurturing that relationship, kind of thing. But when we win that client, if we've won the right client, then it becomes valuable, and there are, the lifetime value, kind of thing. So yeah, I think if you are not comfortable selling, I'm not quite sure how you're going to have a business.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, it's so true.
Unless you're going to recruit, unless you've got enough money in the bank and in your plan that you've got, and you're co-founding it with somebody else, and you've got different skill sets. But I think that if you're trying to go it alone, and that's you don't want to do that, you're either going to have to recruit to that, or you're going to have to get on with it.
Yeah, exactly. No, I completely agree. I think that if you're uncomfortable selling, I always say to people, who cares? Just do it anyway. You don't have to feel good. I always say to people, you're not a con man, that you have this amazing product and service. It solves a problem. If you are not out there telling people about it, you're actually doing them a disservice.
Yeah. And, Noah's feedback too, it's, understand sort of why and you know, some people are rude, but honestly, those people that are rude, you never forget them. And what's interesting about those people who either ghost you, who are rude to you, or just, you know, are just very unreceptive, sometimes years later they go and start their business. And what's interesting is they come and pitch to you, and like, obviously I'm not a bitch kind of thing, but that whole thing is you remember people. It's like, you gave me absolutely no time when, you know, you could have politely said, hey, Meredith, thanks so much. I'm really not the right person to speak to. You know, sounds really interesting. You know, like, just, it takes 2 seconds to, you know, it's, you know, people have memories like elephants. It's a small market. It's a small world, you know, you just never know. And you also, that whole thing that you never know where you're going to be next kind of thing. So, yeah, I find that absolutely wild that people are like that, and they think that they acting like they're your best friend. And you're like, hang on a minute.
I don't think so. Yeah.
No, it's like, you know, and obviously I'll always be kind to them, but, you know, am I going to invest my time in them? You know, probably not.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's even interesting as well, I think, on the reverse side, if you're the founder, one thing I've found is, you know, we'll have people who don't go ahead with us, you know, who say no, but then, and it might not be the right time, they might not have the right budget, but 12 months later, they've changed jobs. You know, we work in an industry where the turnover is incredible. And it's like, if you're just nice to them, and even if they say no to you, you still, no worries, all good, come to this next event, you come to this free masterclass, and you nurture that relationship. They'll go somewhere else where it is the right time. They do have the budget, and they know how much you respected them and were nice and nurtured that relationship, and they'll walk you into that new business.
Oh, totally. And I think that's your brand experience, isn't it? And, you know, it's like you've already put all this, you know, effort into nurturing. And I think also, you know, I really try to nurture relationships from a place of being genuine, that, you know, I'm you know, not false and, you know, my approach kind of thing. You know, I think that, you know, relationships are important to everyone, but I think that, you know, if you don't gel with someone, you know, you can't force that kind of thing. And maybe there's somebody else in your business who'd be better off working with or approaching that person kind of thing, you know.
Yeah. I like, that's just great self-awareness, right? You know, just understanding what the larger goal is, understanding that relationships are all different and we all interact differently, and making sure that we, you know, pick the right person or the right interaction.
Yeah, totally. And, you know, that also comes right down to client fit as well. You know, there's the relationship, but then there's also, are they the right fit for your business kind of thing? Because, you know, a bad client, you know, and I think that's really hard when you're starting a business. And we're a project-based business. So, you know, every project, and we have a lot of projects which are repeat projects, but nothing's ever a given kind of thing. So, you know, winning the right client and nurturing the right, you know, relationships is really important to us. If we have a client who doesn't invest in the relationship with us, you know, we do this great work and then they had 1 or 2 things to do themselves and they don't do it, well, then we're going to end up doing a bad job. It's going to, you know, reflect on us, reflect on them, that they're not really the right fit for us. They might be a nice person kind of thing. So I think that, you know, getting that fit is really important, which is hard when you're either a project-based business or you're just starting because you're like, I need money. But, you know, the wrong client is worse than no client.
Yeah, I know, you're so right. That temptation to just take everything and just, you know, work yourself into the ground and not say no can be really detrimental to the longevity of a business. Yeah,
and also the team around you, you know, and I can't say that I've been perfect on all occasions and things like that, but I've definitely learned from mistakes that, you know, that the impact isn't just to yourself, it's to the wider team as well. And, you know, it's incredibly motivating for them to know that you've got their back as well if we just can't seem to turn things around with a client for whatever reason it might be.
Yeah. And that's a great example of fantastic leadership. So, you know, obviously when you started the business, I'm assuming you were solo or just with the co-founder. Yeah. How did you go about growing the team over time?
Well, obviously, as we won projects and clients, you know, we recruited that. But I think, you know, you've got to also take a bit of a bet on. So, yeah, it was just me to start with. And obviously, I had my co-founder in the UK who I sort of had weekly calls with at very late at night because she was based in the UK and running a business at, you know, quite a difficult time for the UK economy. I obviously I used a recruiter in the first instance, which again, all of these things like really like feel like they're like such hurt. You're like, oh my God, I'm paying $12,000 for this person, but when you need someone quick, you need someone who's got a good pipeline of people. They've done a lot of the pre-work. They've already know you, there's a reason why, and look, we don't use recruiters all the time. I try to build a, good network and pipeline of talent, but they have a role to play. If you've landed a project and you need someone fast, that well, whatever the fee is inconsequential because it allows you to focus on running the business, running the client kind of thing, So again, there's just some know what to spend money on, that's just the cost of business, to be honest. So I used recruiters to start with, and then obviously, the people that came and joined us, they had people that they used to work with who, obviously, recruit from, within their networks as well. And, that's really how we've grown from there.
Awesome. And have you found, we often hear, culture being, the topic of the moment. How have you found building the culture within your team? Have you got any tips for people who might be just starting out with kind of small teams and growing it and kind of going, oh my God, what do I actually focus on?
Yeah, I think being very clear on your values and behaviors, and it all comes from the top. And I think that, you have to be the champion of culture. Your business is always a mirror of how you are personally as well, kind of thing, like being quite self-aware, as you've sort of said. I think when, there's different culture goes through, I think knowing that culture isn't just fun, free stuff kind of thing. Culture is how you treat people. Culture is, what examples do you set for people kind of thing that, just making sure that you've really thought about how you reflect and show up in the business, because people will mirror you as well. And I think, when you're small, I think, it's easy to wrap your arms around the business. But I think, some of the things that I did when we were sort of at a smaller stage, we would team up with, another friend of mine who'd founded a business at the same time, which is actually influencer marketing agency as well. We shared similar office space. So we would sometimes do like joint Christmas parties, joint Melbourne Cup, because we only had like 4 people in our team, and it's like the same 4 people that you've been talking to all week, and now we're having fun, we sort of did things like that to sort of bring a bit of freshness and a bit of a bigger group kind of together. So I think culture is very if it's strong, it shouldn't be fragile, which I know that sounds like really, again, like really sort of obvious, but be very protective of it, because one toxic person can have a real impact on your business quite quickly. It's amazing how the impact of it. And so nip the behaviors in the bud really quickly kind of thing, and make sure that you're taking time to recruit against your values and behaviors, and embed them in right from the off, because again, it's the same as the wrong client, the wrong hires can be very difficult for you kind of to manage.
Someone once said to me, culture is never finished. So something that you've got to focus on all of the time. And you are spot on that. I think, business is almost a little bit fragile. It is the wrong client, the wrong team member, the wrong strategy. It all can go awry very quickly. So it is sort of super important as the leader to make sure you do have your eye on everything. Yeah,
and keep seeking feedback as well. And, take the feedback on when it is relevant, but also brush it off when you're like, okay, I can see that feedback, I'm hearing you, but actually I know where that's coming from kind of thing. So I think you have to have a little bit of a thick skin sometimes when it comes to feedback. Don't be, because if you rolled over for every person's feedback, you'd end up just flipping and flopping. You wouldn't stay the course of what your vision for what your culture is going to be like kind of thing. So clearly it's a living and breathing thing, and everybody's part of that. But, you got to know when it's, this is just the way we do things, or, this is a deal breaker kind of thing, and know when it's also not a deal breaker, I think, because I think often when you seek that feedback, people do have good ideas too, and you always have to be evolving as well. And, I'm 42 now, and I can't pretend, I can't pretend to have the same, I can remember what it's like to be 21, 22 in the workplace, but, you easily also forget kind of thing. So, just making sure that you do, for me, like we have new starters and, more junior people, I, have a calendar across the year where we just go and have a coffee with them. And the agenda is not about me. It's literally just, 45 minutes, an hour for them to talk about themselves. I really don't care if we just talk about restaurants or, what you're doing at the weekend, or if you want to talk about the work or, what's next for you kind of thing. I think all of that just shows people, that you do care for them. I think, as leaders, there's an incredible like pastoral care that you have to have for your workforce. You actually do have to care about people, like genuinely. Yeah, I think that is, business, that whole thing, business is personal kind of thing. And and honestly, I genuinely like the people that I work with, and I'm always, I'm always amazed by, the things they come up with, talk about, and just the energy that they bring. And that's, it comes from, I genuinely am impressed by that. I'm not making it up of like, wow, that's great kind of thing, and then you can just do it exactly how I see it. Kind of thing. Yeah. I think some people like you've got to let some things go when it comes, like, set what the culture vision is, and then, empower people to get on with it too.
Oh, absolutely. And I think if you're the only one coming up with the ideas, you're the only one implementing, you're the only one, you are limiting yourself and your business.
Oh, and just also exhausting, it's like little things like, we have like champions across the business for different elements of culture, and, the people, just things like making sure there's somebody who's mapped out all the birthdays and make sure that each team is responsible for organizing the cake for that person in their team. Because if it was left for me, it's just another thing that I'm probably going to forget kind of thing. And I do care when people's birthdays are, it's impossible for you to, carry all of those things when you've got so many other priorities too.
Yeah. And I think as the founder or the leader of the business, it's really important to understand where you bring the most value. And whilst the cake is so important and someone has to remember the cake, if that's what you're spending your time on, the business growth might be suffering.
Yeah. And that's a constant check-in kind of thing, like constant check-in to yourself of, is this the best bang for my buck on my time? Is there somebody else? And look, honestly, that's a work in progress all the time for me. And I think any founder that says otherwise is probably lying kind of thing. But I think you have to always keep checking in, particularly when there's requests of your time, whether that's internal or external, are you the right person to be doing that? And, I keep getting asked to be members of some like paid networking groups. And I just have to be honest. I'm like, I don't have the time. This sounds great, but I cannot commit to any more extracurricular activities. I've got children. I need to do the things that I'm already doing well, not pay a subscription, join up to something that, because the joining up part of those things is easy.
Yes.
Seeing it through, so.
I love that too. I was having a chat to another founder the other day about the extracurricular, and how easy it is to get swept up in, speaking on a panel, attending a networking event, being asked to speak on a panel or whatever it might, or joining a membership or whatever it might be. All of those things just add up, or even like awards and those things, like they all add up. And you've got to really sometimes take stock on if they're actually driving a return for the business, or, or if you are willing to sacrifice something. So willing to sacrifice family time for that, or willing to sacrifice whatever your hobby is, if you're not actually taking, regular check-ins to really think about what you're doing with your time, it can be really detrimental, I think.
Yeah. And do you enjoy it as well? I think that enjoyment and fun, I'm really fortunate. My business partner, Gareth, one of the first things when I interviewed him was, asked him what he wanted out of it. And he was like, honestly, I want to have fun. And that's so refreshing because, we work really hard. Like sometimes being a founder of a business, running a business, whatever you're in, it's not very fun, so, for these other things, which it could be, they need to really add value to your business, and ideally something that gives you some energy and where you can make impact, because otherwise what's the point? You know, like you're not going to be able to keep going with those things as well. So I think that, you know, again, when you're looking at all the things that you spend energy on, you know, has to give you some return personally as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, you know, we've talked about a few different things and how rewarding it is, and culture and all of those things. What about challenges? So have you had any problems since you started the business?
Oh, I think, you know, COVID, obviously. You know, I've had issues with probably in the early days with suppliers letting you down. That's been, you know, when it was business critical, you know, had a company turn around and say, look, we no longer want to work on this contract, which I was just like, wow. You know, for me, I hold very high standards, and if I've committed to something and someone, even if I'm not enjoying it, you know, unless it was that example of toxic to the team or something like that, you know, I wouldn't pull the pin, because I just know that that's going to ruin your that's, you know, not good for your reputation or your personal brand. So, you know, being let down by suppliers, you know, in the early days. Now we're obviously further down the track. You have, you know, good relationships, approved supplier lists, all that sort of stuff. I think probably our biggest challenge right now is we're in a period of, you know, growth, and I think that but being ready for growth as well. Probably, I think that when I say that, you know, I've had 2 kids, we've been through COVID, you know, with being an event business, like all the things, and we've actually done really phenomenally well out of it, and, you know, are set for a lot of success. But I think that that next stage of growth, you know, I think, you know, you sort of get to your business to a certain level kind of thing. You need to stick some more risk into it to get to that next level. And that's sort of what we're going through at the moment. So that's definitely a challenge. And the way that I've sort of tackled that is, you know, seek advice from other people.
Nice.
So put some figures around what would you be prepared to lose, and you know, like, and also like knowing that if you're not trying things, you know, like you know, things that don't work out are not, they haven't, it sounds stupid, but they're not unsuccessful. They're, you know, you've tried something, and you know, you've got to, you know, park that, know when to park it and then move it on kind of thing. So I think those navigating, trying to break through different levels, like, you know, billing your first $1 million of revenue, you know, is your sort of as like a magic number. You get there, and then, you know, you talk about the sort of 3 years. There's different sort of milestones in business, and for us, you know, we're in our 11th year. You know, for me personally, I've got a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. There's been different stages of it. So, but now I think it's also, you have to be ready for what that next stage is too.
Yeah, I love that so much. I think, I mean, there's so many nuggets of wisdom there in terms of, you know, being willing to take some level of risk and try new things. You know, the world changes so quickly, especially in the marketing industry. And I just feel like if you're doing the same thing over and over, you are just not keeping up with the people that are coming through, the new businesses, the new ideas. It is so easy to get left behind if you're not experimenting with new, you know, channels and ideas and products inside your business.
And I think it keeps it fun as well. You know, I think that, you know, there's a level of interest as well.
All but fun.
Yeah, you know, it's like, you know, challenging, but I think that, again, like stimulating yourself, you know, from a leadership perspective, because, you know, in some ways your role doesn't change a lot, but in other ways it does change, you know, and you can force the change too, sort of thing. So if you're not enjoying things, know that, you know, it's up to you to sort of say, okay, well, I need to make it, you know, and sometimes, you know, and I'm fortunate that you're having like my business partner, Sharon, she'll be like, you know, let's revisit this in 6 months time, because sometimes you're in the eye of a storm and it's a particularly tricky kind of thing. You know, and I think that, again, I'm quite a resilient person. I can stick at things to the point where it's like, well, that was just a bad decision. But sometimes you're right in the thick of it, and then, you know, before you know it, that issue is past, and actually you're like, oh, okay, I can get some perspective on that, you know, that was just a temporary thing. So yeah, I think all of those are challenges.
Yeah. But I love as well, you've mentioned it a couple of times, that seeking feedback from other people. So people like advisors or mentors or people in the industry, like people that have done what you're trying to do, or just somebody that can get you out of your own way, is just so valuable in business.
Totally. And I probably once a year look around at my network and about people who I think who've done this before. And, I'll be really honest on, when I say to them, I'll be like, I literally probably have nothing to give you. I'm not going to ask you out for coffee because that's too much of your time. I'll be like, I'm trying to do X, Y, Z. Could we have a quick phone call about it? I never request like a Zoom link up or things like that, because often it's just easier for people to just pick up the phone and have a quick conversation, and I give them that specific question. And again, it comes down to like advice. Like, I might not agree with their advice. It might not be right for my business, but equally so, there might be something that you're like, actually, that's some really good perspective that you've given. And and I'm very open to doing that to people as well. So, like, I think what you put out, you receive, kind of thing. And if you don't ask, you don't get. But that whole thing of, oh, could we go for a coffee? I'll shout you a coffee. It's like, successful people,
I can buy my own coffee.
They can buy their own coffee, kind of thing. I think you just got to be really honest with your pitch on what you're really trying to achieve. And then sometimes people are like, look, I just don't have the time, or actually, I'm not the right person to help you, but you can speak to blah, 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 which is, valuable.
Yeah, no, I love that so much. Meredith, you have been absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for investing your time in the Spark community and sharing your insights. That was absolutely incredible. And I know that everybody tuning in would have gotten immense value from that.
Thanks so much for having me.